Back in March. Great. Those are going to be my 3 introduction points. All right. Of all nationalities who have come today to stand in solidarity with Ukraine, thank you for your presence. We are here today to say, Putin, hands off Ukraine.
Yeah! Hands off Ukraine! Hands off Ukraine! Hands off Ukraine! Hands off Ukraine!
A very special guest who will be speaking in a short while, and that is Congressman Keith Ellison, Democratic Congressman for this district. And we are very honored and thankful to have him here. Letting us know what is going on in Washington, what the Obama administration is doing, what's going on in Congress in terms of standing up to a bully like Vladimir Putin. Congressman Ellison, thank you.
Thank you. And let me thank you all for being out here today. It's absolutely true that politicians, they see the light when they feel the heat. And so you need to be in the street, raising voices, making this issue a priority. I'm telling you, your voices you've raised today are being recognized, are being heard, and I came exactly from the airport to here so I could stand with you. And I want you to know that I'm here to stand with you. I want you to know that there's a lot of Americans who sympathize, who believe in what you're doing, but they need to know more. They don't know enough. And so part of what we have to do is an educational campaign to help our fellow Americans understand the seriousness of the situation. That's right. So a lot of people, they might have their heart in the right place, but they don't know that there has been a steady aggression, a steady taking of more territory, trying to take more influence, and that this thing that we've seen in Crimea and Western Ukraine, this is not going to stop just because we hope it would. This is going to require a stout heart, a loud voice, and some true organization. And so I want you to know that I'm committed with you here today. I'm proud, I'm honored to be with you here today. I want to encourage you. You all are in the 5th Congressional District, but I'm sure there's somebody out here who lives maybe in Minnesota, Wayzata, am I right? Yeah. So we need to talk to Eric Paulson, we need to talk to Betty McCollum, we need to talk to all of them to get them on the right page. And I want you to know your personal experience is very important. You know, this is not just about what you can read on the internet. Some of you, I just talked to a gentleman who came to this country in 1949 who has seen country after country fall victim to this aggression, this need to acquire more and more territory and through intimidation. And so the personal stories really matter. Maybe you yourself have come from Ukraine, come from Latvia, come from Poland or Belarus. Maybe you've seen it yourself. This is critically important. And you might want to write down your own story so that you can help educate more Americans and make it not just an intellectual thing, but a personal thing too. Because your neighbors care about you, and if you tell them this is important, we have to pay attention, we cannot say this is a conflict far, far away. No, this is our business, this is happening to our neighbors, this is happening to our fellow citizens. So these are just some strategies we can use to be more effective, but I want to tell you, you being out here on this Friday afternoon is incredibly important. Now, the U.S. Congress has passed a sanctions bill to try to bring accountability to the Putin government and passed foreign aid to the Ukraine to help hold up the economy and help them. But there's more that needs to be done. There's more that needs to be done. But I want to tell you this. What will be done based on your advice, based on what you think is the right thing to do. So raising the voices here today is critically important. Now, we need to make Russia obey and agree to the treaties that it has promised. They can't make promises and then violate those promises. They signed a treaty, and so they must be held accountable to obey the treaty, and the United States must be there to make sure they do so. Let me tell you, we will be in touch. We will be working on this thing, but I want to honor you and thank you for raising your voices today, bringing attention to a critical issue that must be important, not just to us here in the United States, but really all over the world. Thank you all very much.
Congressman Ellison mentioned the importance of people's individual, personal stories, and that's why I would like to ask our next speaker to come up. He is Ihor Mikhailenko. He is a native of Kyiv, came to this country in 1992, and he's been active in our local Ukrainian community and been very aware of what's going on in Ukraine. In fact, he just came back from a trip to Kyiv.
Impression of the people in the street, or my friends who I talked with regarding this invasion of Russia into Ukraine, was bewilderment, and certainly upon some consideration and upon some reflection, you can find the reasons for Putin to invade Ukraine and so on and so forth. But the first human reaction was why? Why they decided to intrude into our own business? It's a foreign country now. Why they took it as their own business and did that unlawful thing of another Maidan? But that remains to be seen. Now we face a larger problem with Russian invasion. And that's basically all I wanted to tell you. And glory to Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Ihor. Дякую, Ihor. Спасибо. What Ihor was saying made an impression on me because his words about language remind me of something that I think is very important, because it's not the nationality that you are, it's not the language that you speak, it's not the way in which you worship that matters, it's what is in your heart that matters. Do you embrace truth? Do you embrace freedom and democracy? Do you embrace respect for all peoples? Thank you, Ihor. Before we bring up our next speaker, I'd like to ask you all to join me in a chant, something that I think in Ukrainian captures what we're about today. It's a saying that I've heard many times. I feel very strongly about it now. It is Одна єдина соборна Україна. One single, united Ukraine, because that is what Ukraine is. These events that have been happening, the violence that's been going on, this has all been instigated from abroad, from the office of Vladimir Putin. And so I hope you'll join me. Одна єдина соборна Україна. Одна єдина, соборна Україна. Help your neighbors. Одна, єдина, соборна Україна. Одна, єдина, соборна Україна. I'd like to invite our next speaker, who is about to leave for Ukraine. Her mission is as an election monitor for the May 25th presidential elections. We know that there is a quote-unquote referendum being organized for this weekend. That is a sham that even its organizer has pulled out of, or has said, don't do it, postpone it. You know why? Because he knows he's going to lose. The Ukrainian people are going to win, and they're going to win on May 25th when they freely elect their own president and their own government. And our next speaker, Yuba Levitska, is going to help by serving as election monitor, something I had the honor of doing 10 years ago. She's going to tell us about her mission. Yuba!
Дякую. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to our heroes. Slava Ukraini. Heroyam Slava. Thank you, Volodya. It's very difficult and actually very easy to speak today. If you're like me, your body is here today, but my heart, my passion, and my prayers are in Ukraine as our brothers and sisters struggle for a free and democratic Ukraine with a future in the European community, not in Russia. What we have here in the United States is the freedom to access information, to become informed, as the congressman just said. We have the freedom to make our voices heard. This is a freedom that is increasingly vanishing in Ukraine, in Russia, and many other Slavic countries. So, how do we make a difference? Each and every one of us today. As the congressman said, we need to be informed. We need to be fully informed. We need to speak loudly to our congressional leaders. And we hope that they will hear us. We want them to know that the United States must take action to help keep Ukraine free and to move Ukraine into the European mainstream and not into Russia. As Volodko said, the urgency is on May 25th. These elections must take place. And this at the express will of the Russian people, not Putin and his government. It's either that, or chances are a civil war could break out. I don't have an answer for what each and every one of you can do. I personally am volunteering my time and money to go and to help ensure a free, transparent, and clear election. You may say, what difference can you make? I will tell you 2 years ago, when I was at the elections for the legislators, for the Rada, there were 300 of us from all over the world. We made a difference. We watched. By the way, it's a paper ballot. There are no scanners. So everything is counted by paper. And because of that, there is fraud. People lie. They hide ballots. They stuff ballots. They mark the papers in different colored ink. And that way the people who are cheating know, this is for pro-Russia. This is not for Ukraine. So our mission is we watch like hawks. We have cameras. We have videos. We can ask questions of the leader of the polling site. We can't speak to the voters and we can't interrupt the vote. But we can watch and observe and make sure that they know that we are watching. We're taking pictures, and then we bring those reports in. We report it to a centralized global community, and then the report comes out that this precinct was fraudulent, the votes were bribed, and that's how we help to ensure in some sites of a free and transparent. We are not going to be many. We cannot send observers to the east right now. It's too dangerous. So Donetsk, Luhansk, and maybe Kharkiv may not have international observers, but we don't know that for sure. Things are changing, but as of this morning, there's a big question mark. So we're going primarily in the central, the south, and into the west. So I don't have an answer for you in terms of what you can personally do. But let me leave you with one critical question, perhaps the most important question of this year and maybe of your life. What are each one of you today and tomorrow going to do to help ensure that Ukraine remain free and healthy for our generations? What are our Latvian brothers and sisters going to do as they are here today, supporting us to ensure that Putin doesn't come into Ukraine, and then to Latvia, then to the Baltics, then to Poland and onward? Because Putin will not stop. It's up to you to speak to your congresspeople, become informed, know what you're talking about, and do not fail your brothers and sisters in Ukraine so that we truly have a future in Ukraine. Slava Ukraini! Glory to Ukraine!
Дякую, Люба. Thank you, Люba. There are many reasons why many people have come together to support Ukraine in its hour of need. Just being a global citizen, caring about the rule of law, sticking to international agreements, and just respect for your fellow man demands that you stand up for Ukraine. So I want to thank those of you who are here for that reason. I also want to thank the folks who are here because, well, they feel our pain, because they're our neighbors. And that's why the next group that's going to come up here is the Teksma Latvian Choir. They are a local Latvian folk choir, and they've come here to stand in solidarity with Ukraine. We also really want to stress how much we appreciate the support of the Latvian American community and Latvians worldwide for Ukraine. Latvia is in a very similar situation to Ukraine. It borders on Putin's empire. It has a Russian minority, and it is eyed from the Kremlin.
To do with Latvia, its bravery, its beauty. The first one, Riga, iešu es māmiņa. I am going to Riga, and I'm going to draw a boundary around my country so that the strange forces cannot get in.
Riga, iešu es māmiņa, vele balti vilnānītes, vele balti vilnānītes. Ja viņš zina vajadziešu, straujam tak kā dauga viņa, straujam tak kā dauga viņa.
Sidrabiņa Upetak is the song about preparing for war. But we don't actually declare war. We are preparing to defend. And I think the same thing can be said in the Ukraine as in Latvia and all up and down the Baltic Sea coast. We don't invade, we defend where we've been and where we want to be.
Auries kājas paleliņi, paleliņi, sedlo savu kumeliņu, kumeliņu. Es dzirdēju aizvārdiemi, varapungas rībinoti, rībinot.
Atverdiesi varavardi, varavardi, visu šādi cilvēku vīnāviņš. Tuļas mani paleliņi, paleliņi, satiem kosti zobentiņi,
Visiem būres aiztēpot, visiem slēdz bez zobenājiem zobenā. Nocep būres gaismās, gaismās, no zobenā saulē lecam, saulē lec. Visi ceļi kuņiem dega, kuņiem dega, visi ceļi atslēgami, atslēgami.
Viņa palīdziņu, palīdziņu, visam varu cauri tikti, cauri tikt.
Thank you very much.
And as a matter of fact, I know we have a lot of Ukrainian citizens here today, and I'd just like to actually mention that we have both members of our committee and other supporters from many cities throughout Ukraine, including in the east, including in the regions where there's currently unrest. Kyiv. We have friends and supporters from Crimea, from Kerch, from Simferopol. We have members and supporters from Zaporizhia, from Kharkiv, from Uman, and from Mariupol, where unfortunately today there's reports of street fighting and shooting, and reports that I've seen list between 8 and 20 people killed. It's very tragic, and had it not been for the intervention of Vladimir Putin, these things would not be happening. I'd like to now introduce our next speaker. His name is Frank Forrestal. He is a journalist who has spent quite a bit of time in Ukraine and recently returned. He's a keen observer of events, not just in Kyiv, but in many cities throughout Ukraine. Frank, please. Please welcome Frank Forrestal.
I want to thank Minnesota Maidan for inviting me here. If I hadn't been invited, I still would have come. I spent about 3 weeks in the Ukraine. I went to the Maidan for several days, and then I traveled to the west of Ukraine, and I also went to the southeast. I was on a reporting trip for the Militant newspaper, which for the last 3 months, above the fold, has had the lead articles on the fight for sovereignty in Ukraine and for getting Russia out of the Ukraine. This struggle in the Ukraine is one of the most important things going on in the world today. We knew in the United States from the militant that we had to go there. We had been writing about the fight for independence and sovereignty and getting the Russian boot off their necks. But we had to go and see for ourselves what was happening in the country. And since we were there, we've come back to the United States, and we've been speaking all over many cities. And what we tell people is that you need to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainian people in their fight for national sovereignty. What happened in the Ukraine was a sustained mobilization of working people that we haven't seen since the end of the Cold War. I want to end with 2 things. In terms of the United States, when we were traveling around the Ukraine, one of the things we said was that the United States, working people here, should demand of the United States that they give unconditional economic aid to Ukraine. No strings attached, no squeezing of the working people like the IMF is trying to do. It should be unconditional, across the board, because as we know, there's a deep economic crisis in the Ukraine. I want to end with, come to our table up here. I have a campaign statement that I've put out calling for defending the national sovereignty of Ukraine, Russian troops out, and also pick up our newspaper, The Militants, the only paper that I know of that unconditionally defends the fight for Ukraine's sovereignty and Russia out. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And I want to echo what Frank said, because we're talking about the aggression of the government of Vladimir Putin. And for those who do pay attention to what goes on around the world, there are many, many people in Russia who are opposed to their government. And they stand in solidarity with us. And frankly, we stand in solidarity with them, because it is that kind of authoritarian government and imperialist expansionism that is the problem, not people. It's power. Thank you. I want to shift a little bit, because the next person I'd like to introduce is a performer. She has been a member of our community since she came to this country in 1993 from Lviv, which is a city in western Ukraine. That is Galina Gabriel. And she will be performing 2 songs for us. One is a song that she composed specifically for today, specifically in reaction to the events that are happening in Ukraine right now, and that is called Ya Vilna, I Am Free. And she will do a second song that is dedicated to the Nebesna Sotnya, the Heavenly 100, the people who died, over 100 people who died when the Yanukovych government attacked the peaceful protesters on Maidan. And that song is called Povstanci, Partisans, or it also has an alternate title, Vyshivanka, which is embroidery. Which is, as you can see, those of you who are not Ukrainian, many of us are wearing our Vyshivanki here today. Thank you, and please welcome Galina Gabriel.
Не скорилася я від ворожих насильств, в очах сльози та кров під прицілом було моє серце. І у мене була лише думка одна, що не буду стоять на колінах, вже я краще вмерти. Я вільна, значить не загину. Я мрію, радію, заплету коси, і в цьому моя вся мета. Я вільна, кайданів не маю. Я вільна, а тому співаю молитві до Бога. Я хвалу приношу і славлю Його лиш ім'я. Я вільна, від вогню та диму. Я вільна, значить не загину. Я мрію, надію, заплету коси, і в цьому моя вся мета. Я вільна, кайданів не маю. я вільна, а тому співаю молитві до Бога. Я хвали приношу і славлю його лиш ім'я. Я вільна, я вільна, я вільна. Дуже дякую. Хочу також посвятити цю пісню всім, хто загинув під час Великої Вітчизняної війни, згадати про наших ветеранів, згадати про всіх, хто воював за нашу Україну, за нашу рідну землю. Слава Україні! Я хочу представити свого колегу, свого найкращого, одного з найкращих моїх друзів, Віктора Броніцького. І для тих, хто не знає, I better speak English. Well, I would like to introduce you to my good friend Viktor Brunitsky, who's the first Ukrainian in 58 years during the Russian, like Soviet regime, who came to America and married American wife and been here and did such a great job going back and forth. He's originally from Kiev and he is also a minister. So welcome, Victor.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Христос Воскрес! It is a distinct privilege to be with you this afternoon and to let you know that indeed I was born, raised, and educated in the city of Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine. We want to keep it that way as well. Now, today many people are talking about Putin. We lovely call him Putler, like Adolf Putler. Way back then in 1970, I met an American. We wanted to get married. Way back then, KGB decided that I was not fit to be a husband for an American girl. What they tried to do was to give me an injection of turpentine. I was supposed to be dead. By the grace of God, I'm alive. And I want to tell you that the techniques of KGB have not changed much these days. People are vanishing in both Russia and, of course, Ukraine. Today we have over 65 officers of the secret forces of Russia in Kiev, and they're telling Kievites what their mission was: to plunder, kill, and destroy the democracy in Eastern Europe, which Ukraine is. Many people don't realize that Ukraine is the second largest territory in Europe. Ukraine has 2 seas. We want to keep it that way as well. Like the West and the United States decided to stay away from Ukraine. We're not involved into the war. We're war fatigued. We all understand that. But how about giving them some weapons so that that Ukrainian defenders can defend themselves? There's nothing to defend. So I want you to remember Ukraine as a very dear country with very dear people who decided to be free and independent in 1991. They were the 4th country to declare their independence, right along with our brothers from Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania today. So pray that the Lord will protect them. Pray that our government in Washington will start understanding that if Putin goes into Ukraine and he wants to go all the way to Kiev, he will not stop. There will be Czechoslovakia, there'll be Romania, there'll be Moldavia, and there'll be Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. We pray to God Almighty that that will not be done. With that, нехай Господь благословить Україну. Нехай Господь зільє рясні благословіння на наш народ. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
We have another speaker who I would like to introduce, and that is Barb Weiser. She is a very recently returned Peace Corps volunteer who'd been serving in Crimea. Barb Weiser, please welcome her.
Thank you. Is this on? Thank you. Dobry din, Здравствуйте, Salam Alaikum. I greet you in the 3 languages of the Crimean Peninsula, Ukrainian, Russian, and Crimean Tatar. Or they were the 3 languages before Russia invaded and occupied Crimea. I want to talk today about what that invasion has meant for the Crimean Tatar people. The Crimean Khanate ruled the peninsula for 300 years until the Russian Empire annexed Crimea in 1783. At the time of that annexation, there were 6 million Crimean Tatars living in Crimea, and they were 98% of the population. Over the next 2 centuries, Russia slowly forced the Crimean Tatars out of the peninsula. And on May 18, 1944, Stalin deported the entire remaining population to distant Soviet republics, a genocidal act that resulted in the deaths of 46% of the population, and achieved what many historians feel was the Russian desired final solution of a Crimea without Crimean Tatars. But 20 years ago, after 50 years of struggle in the Soviet Union, the Crimean Tatars finally were allowed to return to Crimea and began to rebuild their homes and communities. Despite meeting fierce resistance by many of the Russian inhabitants who have moved into Crimea to take over their homes and land, the Tatars were able to rebuild their communities and establish a vibrant culture. Today, there are over 300,000 Crimean Tatars in the peninsula, and they constitute 13% of the population. Crimean Tatars find themselves living in a country that has oppressed them for centuries and that they struggled so hard to leave. Though the ethnic Russians and Crimean Tatars on the peninsula had learned to live in peace, the Russian invasion and occupation has given those unspoken historic hostilities a voice. Almost every day I talk to my Crimean Tatar friends in Simferopol, and every time I hear yet another disturbing story. The 14-year-old Crimean Tatar boy who was beat up in the street in broad daylight in Simferopol because he was speaking his native tongue. The coldness and aloofness of formerly friendly ethnic Russians at workplaces and stores. The forcing of a friend of mine to go to the May Day parade in Simferopol or she would lose her job. The requirement that in order to own property, to work, to basically live in Crimea, one must become a Russian citizen, an anathema to Crimean Tatars. And on the news services from Crimea, I read increasingly alarming reports. Most recently, the Crimean government took the outrageous action of banning Mustafa Dzhemili from Crimea. I ask that the international community continue to keep its eye trained on Ukraine and Crimea and pressure their governments do everything possible to stop the Russian aggression against the people of Ukraine. And I also ask that the international community to not forget Crimea, to not accept that it is now part of Russia, and to not allow Russia to once again displace the Crimean Tatar people from their homeland. In the words of the Crimean Tatar language, Krym Ukraina Velikia, Crimea and Ukraine together. Slava Ukraini. Diakuyu Sagol. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. The plight of the Crimean Tatars really brings tears to my eyes. And I want to say that Mustafa Dzhemilov, I've read his biography. I did not know very much about him until recently, and on reading what this man has been through for the rights of his people, I just want to say that Mustafa Dzhemilov is a hero for all of humanity.
Yes. Hands up Ukraine! 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 Hands up Ukraine!
Minne наші спини, золоті кучері, мінне шелестиві, над ним старенька матінка стоїть, а над ним старенька матінка стоїть, і до свого сина тихо говорить, а над ним старенька матінка стоїть, і до свого сина тихо говорить. Сину ж ти мій сину, хлопець мій Роман. Сину ж ти мій сину, хлопець мій Роман. Коли б тя не вбили, якби не Майдан. Сину ж ти мій сину, хлопець мій Роман. Коли б тя не вбили, якби не
Вот мы собрались поддержать Украину. Мы верим, что победа будет за нами. И мы хотим, чтобы Украина как государство сохранилась. И мы будем делать все возможное, что мы можем сделать с нашей стороны здесь, в Майдан, Миннесота. Слава Украине!
Барикада стояла, диких собак не пускала, диких собак не пускала. Там барикада стояла, таких собак не пускала, таких собак не пускала. Горіла шина, ще й мішок, горіла шина, ще й мішок, ой навезли нам тітушок, ой навезли нам тітушок. Горіла шина, ще й мішок, ой навезли нам тітушок, ой навезли нам тітушок. Горіла шина, ще й бензин, горіла шина, ще й бензин, стрітя здалека, сучись